Hello and welcome back to Away We Go. I'm Andrew,
I'm Kayla.
and today we have another special country review. We just finished in Greece, 3 weeks, and we want to tell you all about it. Some of our favorites, some of our maybe less so, but overall just our experience there.
Yeah, so thanks for being here. If you've been here before, you probably know that Andrew is our finance guy. He tracks everything that we spend. And so I'm going to hand it over to him to start us off and tell us how much this trip cost.
So Greece was an interesting one because we spent about 10 days, almost half of our time with friends. We had our good friends Caitlin and Rylan come and join us out in Greece for about 10 days, which obviously plays into pricing a little bit, but we knew that going into it. So while some things increased more, as in going out for activities, going out for food, we also tended to save in some other areas. So accommodations maybe were a little bit more expensive, but on a couples by couples basis might have been a little bit better. Transportation was a little bit cheaper, and we also kind of did a lot more. Overall, if you remember our last few reviews in Europe, Italy was quite expensive. And part of that was also we had to pay for some extra nights in Milan when our flights got canceled. As of recording this, we've been or will be reimbursed for at least one of those 2 days. We're still waiting to hear back. So the good news is that'll bring down that average from about $290 something to about $260 something per day. Greece came in after 22 days on an average of $267.20, or $267 per day. So overall, our accommodations were a little bit higher than Croatia, but much lower than Italy. We spent just shy of $3,000 on accommodations, which again, not super surprising when we were in Thessaloniki, Athens, Naxos, Crete, back to Athens, another in Athens. So in like 22 days, we did like, 6 places or 6 different stays. So that tends to add more than like Croatia, where we did 2 full weeks in Zagreb, which would cut down the cost.
We also took a couple of ferries to get around between the islands, and that is included in our transportation costs.
Yeah, so we typically will do anything like Ubers, taxis, buses, trains in transportation. And as we had with Italy, when we did the Amalfi Coast, ferries fall into that transportation side of it. All in all, that was about $650. And then the last thing I want to talk about just real quick on finances was food. So obviously food came in over $2,000 for 3 weeks. This is a mix of stuff. So I would say primarily this is just for 2 people, but I would say there's some 4 people meals in there as well.
Yeah.
Our activities were also higher. Our activities were on par with when we did Peru. It actually is the first country that from an activity standpoint beat Peru. And some of those activities were, we did the Turbo Pass, where we got to see all of the main attractions in Athens.
It encompasses 11 different attractions.
Yeah, and we used it for probably about 6 of those 11 and still made it worthwhile. So we'll talk about that. Yeah. There were a couple of small ones in there, going to see the Rotunda, going to see a couple of other buildings and stuff like that that were like €6 here, €10 there. But the big ones were, we went to a water park, which was about €224 for 4 people. So that is just shy of $55 Canadian per person. We went to Labyrinth Park, which was about $100 Canadian for 4 people. The Palace of Naxos was actually also close to, it was like $90 Canadian. We went to a dinner theater. The dinner theater was about $360 Canadian for 4 people, but that included dinner. We did a $13 self-walking tour of Naxos. So all in all, again, just shy, it was about $1,180.
Keep in mind that $1,100 can be mostly split between 4. Some of those activities Andrew and I did by ourselves, but 90% of them we did as a group of 4.
Yeah. So that plays into it. And also a recommendation, we've done this now with 3 different group friends, not counting Kayla's parents because we handled that one differently, but it's really good to have that communication up front with your group of friends on how you're going to track spending. It takes a lot of pressure off, at least personally, because Kayla and I are doing this for the whole year. It takes a lot of pressure off of, who's paid more? Do I need to pay for the next meal to make up for the last meal? Especially in Europe where splitting the bill is not as common and a little bit trickier in some areas. So it kind of takes off that pressure of you just save up receipts, you can enter them in. I used Excel.
But there are some really good apps out there
We've
as well.
used Splitwise is a pretty good one. So there's a couple of options, but anyway, just a note because that makes a lot of that kind of money stress a little bit easier in the long run.
Yeah.
Real quick, flights were $436. Most of that was to get to Thessaloniki from Croatia. All in all, the Greece trip itself was not our most expensive one, ironically. Italy definitely was. But again, keep in mind that some of that reimbursement will help bring it down. I will say, when people talk about things like Greece and Italy versus you could do a Croatia for cheaper, for sure. We're currently in Cyprus, which you'll see when we do that review, but I can already tell it's going to be cheaper. The issue / benefit with something like Greece and even Italy is there's so much you want to see.
Yeah.
And we definitely did a lot.
We did, for sure.
And to be honest, worth it. So, again, you can easily come here and come to Greece and, spend under $5,000 as a couple and get to see, a good chunk of things. But, that it can vary certainly. So definitely something to look into. Anyway, that's money.
All right, next on our list, we have to talk about where we stayed. And as Andrew mentioned in the intro, we stayed in quite a few different places. We stayed in an Airbnb in Thessaloniki. It was a little studio apartment. It was on the 5th floor, I believe. No views or anything. It did have a little bit of a balcony. We did have a washer, dryer, stove, oven. So we did a lot of our own cooking that week. And yeah, overall, it was a good place. Really liked it. Communication with the host was great. Next, we went to Athens where we met up with our friends Caitlin and Rylan. We stayed in another Airbnb, and this one was a 2-bedroom apartment. It was on the ground floor, and we also had a pool in the backyard, which was one of the best things.
Private pool too.
A private pool,
Wasn't shared.
It was great. A great little lounging space. We are board game people. They are board game people, so they had a nice table outside that was big enough for us to play games on in the evenings. Overall, it was just a really nice place to relax in the afternoon of the day, since siesta hours were between 3 and 5, so you're supposed to be quiet during that time, and it was just cool to be able to go to a pool and relax and whatnot. But also we had enough space that we each got our own room. We could spread out a little bit. There was a kitchen, but we didn't use it. There was a bathroom, there was a washer and a drying rack, so overall had a lot of the good things that we wanted. After that, we headed over to Naxos, where we booked a place on booking.com, and this one was actually a hotel. They had about, I want to say probably 10 to 12 rooms. We each got our own separate room for this one, so we were kind of below ground, and Caitlin and Rylan were on the 2nd floor. In Naxos, we actually stayed in the neighborhood of Adiana. We had a pool. It's a shared pool for everybody. They also had rental vehicles available just to us at the property. So they had quads, they had bikes, and they had cars. So we ended up renting a car one day and taking that around the island of Naxos, which I highly recommend if you are someone who likes to drive or someone who feels confident driving on very small off-road roads.
They weren't all off-roads, they just weren't as
paved
or as wide, to your point, as it is. Just as a note, financially, the car rental that we got was about €60. Other places in town were a little bit higher, 65 to 80. They do charge more if you're going with an automatic transmission versus a manual transmission, stuff like that. But you can get, again, €60 for one day is not too bad.
Yeah. After that, we headed over to Crete. In Crete, we stayed at a hotel. At this hotel, we also got 2 separate rooms, so we each had our own room, and I booked this on booking.com as well. This one was a beach hotel. In Crete, we were just past Heraklion. It was the area of Amadora.
Amadora Beach, yeah.
Yeah, and so It was a very nice beach, way like quiet. Yeah.
We also had one of the big things in Greece is, Greece, Europe in general, but in Greece especially, was that there were like most beaches, it's like rental space. So you like rent like a chair or whatever. This one we had our own space because we came with the hotel.
Yeah.
So that was definitely nice.
Yeah. After that, we headed back to Athens where we stayed in a rental through Marriott Homes. And this was probably one of our favorite places that we stayed. We were on the ground floor of this building that I think is mainly used for vacation rentals. It had 2 bedrooms, it had a washing machine, it had a beautiful big patio that we could sit out on. It was very secure and very safe. We had cameras on the front door so that we could see if anyone was coming to visit us. There was cameras on the back door, and there was cameras at our apartment door that looked out so that we could see who was coming in or who was knocking on the door, which was great. This one also had a pool. Unfortunately, it was a very, very small pool. The pictures made it look way bigger than it was, and it was not great.
If you're going to do a shared pool, look for size, because you can make that work. I think both places we went to had a really small pool, and the moment you have like a family and a half in it, you're done. Like there's no room.
The last place that we stayed in Athens was also an Airbnb, and this one was probably one of my favorites actually. It wasn't as good as the reviews let on, but it also wasn't bad. I think I was just expecting more because of the reviews.
Right.
But it had everything you needed. The kitchen area was a little bit small, so it was hard to prep things. The best thing about this one was actually the view from the rooftop. So we had access to the roof, and it was a shared roof, but every single time we went up there was absolutely no one. And there was a stunning view of the Acropolis.
More specifically, the Parthenon, which we had stayed in another place, and they were like, oh, you get Acropolis views, which that's how some people will trick you. The Acropolis is the hill. So they'll say like you have Acropolis views and you're like, oh sweet, but you just see a different side of the hill. The Parthenon is the actual building that many people recognize. So that's typically what you look for.
Yeah. Anyways, that's where we stayed.
All right, so now we talk about our favorite. Kayla, was there a favorite dish or drink?
Oh, as far as my favorite dish, I loved everything with cheese. In Naxos, they had a special cheese. It was called gravier. It's kind of a different cheese than they would use for other saganakis in Greece, which I really, really liked. We had it with honey and sesame and balsamic and tomatoes, and there were so many different variations of this cheese that we tried, and we literally tried it at almost every single restaurant we went to. On top of that cheese, obviously there's some halloumi, and there's also feta, and sometimes I would have deep fried feta, sometimes I'd have halloumi fries, and just love the cheese. All the cheese was so good. Those are probably my favorite dishes.
Okay.
What about you?
I would say there's a couple of them that come to mind. There would be the lemon potatoes from Naxos. The other one would be dolmades, which is a kind of vine leaf, and most of the time they were stuffed with like a rice. Sometimes they were stuffed with like a rice and a meat, but they also had like these herbs that were really, really good. And we've gotten them served both cold and hot, and to be honest with you, I don't really know which was better. I think the cold ones might have been better. I will also give a shout out. We did visit 3 different bars in the top 50 while we were there. I don't know if I could say which drink was my favorite, but I probably would say Baba Rum.
Had the coolest
atmosphere.
Yeah. Service was really great. Got a free shot of tequila.
There was a couple places where we got like a lot of like free desserts, free shots, like after our meals were done. And it
seems to be like a regular thing.
Yeah, so again, I would say that there's a lot. Greece, like if there's one takeaway from this that I can give to people, is like go to Greece for the food. Order it like the Greeks do, which is share everything. So order a couple apps for the table, a couple main dishes for the table. If you need to a dessert, maybe a coffee in there, like an espresso. Get a drink, get a bottle of wine, like enjoy it. Yeah. Kayla, what is your favorite activity that we did? I also realized we missed one in my precursor when I talked about it. I was just going through my notes. We also went to an open air cinema.
Oh yeah.
Out in Thessaloniki. I was thinking too much about Athens onwards, so Thessaloniki had an open air cinema. But what activity did we do that was your favorite?
An activity that didn't really count as an activity because it more counted as bar
Sure.
was when we were in Thessaloniki, we took one of the sailing boats out at night. So
You
basically,
mean pirate boats?
the pirate boats. Basically, you can go on. It's free to get onto the boat. You have a minimum spend, and it takes you on a half-hour tour around the harbor. We went at night, and we got to see a bunch of really cool. I mean, the whole city lit up.
Yeah.
And Thessaloniki was one of those cities where it's very, very vibrant at night, and so it was just like really cool to be out and about. And so I really liked that, which didn't really count as an activity.
That's fine.
Obviously, I have to say, like, the Acropolis and the Parthenon, I've been before, but it's still like awe-inspiring. But we did go to the Acropolis Museum, and I thought that there were a lot of really cool things there. I think I could have spent way more time there. I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna see what was your favorite activity?
For underrated, that was amazing, was Labyrinth Park. It was just like such a cool experience. Would I go back? Probably not, because it's kind of like a one and done, but I think it was just kind of like
It's fun.
it was a middle of nowhere place that we got to experience.
They had a very weird price set up too, though, just in case anyone is thinking of going. Basically, you have an entrance fee to get in the park, and that includes the labyrinth.
Yeah.
And if you complete the labyrinth, you get a free game of mini golf.
Yeah.
And that's it. Everything else at the park, you need to buy tokens to do other things. So we ended up doing two
Laser maze.
two additional things. So we did a laser maze
and then the Hall of Mirrors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which were really cool. They were fun too. But
for my favorite though, I think I'm torn. One of the things that I really enjoyed, probably more than a lot of the things that I should have enjoyed, was we went to the
Agora, the ancient Agora.
Ancient Agora. So the Ancient Agora is this kind of like area where there was like a market, and there was a lot of different buildings, and they rebuilt one of the buildings where they now use it as a museum, but they still have all of the remnants of all the old stuff, obviously. However, what was really interesting was there's a space on the other side of the road that they've discovered another stoa, or believed to be another stoa, and they are still excavating it. So we actually got to see them twice on two different occasions. Still have people there digging stuff up and still like looking.
Yeah.
So to me, that was really cool, because you kind of have this mindset about Greece where you're like, wow, we've discovered all this history, now go come and see it. But to then be like, there's still so much
More to
history that we haven't seen.
find, yeah.
So that to me, I think has a very special part to it.
Okay. What was your favorite day?
Has to be my birthday, just because we got to do so much cool stuff. And I also won a free drink, which was just a lot of juice. I don't think there was any alcohol in that drink, but anyway. What about you?
I think one of my favorite days has to be the day that we rented the car and we drove around Naxos. And it's not because we did anything in particular that was really cool, but it was really nice to be able to see an island more than we would if we were just like sitting in our hotel or like going to the beach and like walking, you know. So they have a lot of farmland, but they also
did the olive tour.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
Oh yeah, that was another activity that we forgot about. So we ended up going to a couple different small towns. We did a tour of a distillery.
Yes.
And went and had some drinks at their cocktail bar. And we also did a tour of an olive press and did an olive oil and olive tasting.
Oh, that was so good.
I am not an olive person. I like olive oil, but I don't like olives. And I even found some olives that I like. So that was really cool. But we also just like spent the day in the car, driving around.
Got to try different foods, drinks.
Different side of the island. We went to different beaches. We saw the mountains. We saw the farmland. We also went to the Temple of Demeter, which was really, really cool. Anyways, that day was one of my favorites. I know it was a little stressful driving on those roads. I think everyone was a little bit on edge, but I think like in overall, I just enjoyed walking around and seeing things and seeing more things than we would have had we just sat in our
It was
place.
also, not busy parts of town, so that was nice. Yeah. All right, Kayla, I think we've talked enough. How would you rank Greece out of 10?
I want to say 8 out of 10. I really liked Greece. I have been to Greece before, and I've been wanting you to return to Greece with me for the longest time, so it was really nice to have that. But I also realized going again that I would go again very easily. Like, I loved the food, I loved the people, and there's so much more to see.
I was going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think the best part, again, was the food. I think also, like, in that last place that we stayed, the last Airbnb, having the view of the Parthenon every day, I was like, I don't know if, like, I probably would get tired at some point of just waking up and seeing that, but I think there's some, level of connectivity and beauty of like that history that I really enjoyed. But I also think the food alone, I would have just been in heaven the whole time. The beauty of Greece is you also get to include all of its islands. So, there's so much more of Crete I would do. I would obviously check out, Paros, Mykonos, some of the other islands. So there's a lot more to see.
Yeah.
Downsides are like the language is a little bit harder, obviously.
Yeah, I tried. I promise you, I tried.
So that's an area that I think, would be great to learn, but it's not an easy one to pick up. Again, I'd love to give it a 10. A little pricey in some areas, and the language is hard, but overall, very beautiful.
Yeah. So that's an endorsement. Go to Greece. It's great.
Yeah, give it a shot. That's the birthplace of the world?
No.
It's the birthplace of the gods? I don't know.
Well, the Greek gods, yeah.
Greek gods.
There's a lot of cool stuff.
There's a lot of good history there, so definitely go check it out.
And if you're not into history, there's a lot of good food.
Yeah, and if you're not into food, there's water and...
Yeah. The beaches are fabulous.
Oh, I meant to drink, but that too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot.
Yeah.
Anyways,
thank you so much for joining us today.
We will be back in a few weeks to do another review, this time of Cyprus. But if you haven't already, please go and watch our other videos of our trip around the world. Feel free to like, subscribe, leave us a comment also. Are you Greek? Did we miss anything? Is there something we got wrong? Is there something we got right? And you want to say, wow, you guys were here for 3 weeks, but you feel Greek. Honestly, we want to make you honorable Greeks. And I would say we would be honored. Otherwise, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.